Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I'm your host, David Stevenson, and I hope everyone is well. I'm joined this morning by Matt Coburn, who is the Head of Sales and Distribution at NatWest Rapid Cash. Matt, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for having me.
So this morning, Matt will be taking us on a presentation through working with your bank to manage your cash flow. And afterwards, I will open it up to questions at the end. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. So plan this morning is to take you through a short presentation, which I've got on the screen in a moment. Just wanted to highlight a couple of disclaimers at the outset. So if you hear young kids running around, we are homeschooling, like I'm sure a lot of you are. So I do apologise for that. Hopefully it'll be more light brevity that you'll be hearing rather than screaming and shouting. Also, quick thing about the content on the presentation. So some of the stuff I've tried to include in here is a bit more generic as opposed to specifically NatWest related. Appreciate that not the entire audience will be a NatWest customer. And also that there are some points in here that are a collection of my experiences of how you can generate a good customer experience for when you're approaching the bank. And then just finally, that obviously some of the stuff in here relates to the government schemes that are live right now, and obviously, as we know, they can be subject to change, so including a change yesterday which has prompted a very, very quick rewrite. So just more want to make you aware of that some of the detail does change, so it might not always be relevant. So just want to let you know that. So without further ado, happy to get started. So hope this works. David, can you see that okay?
Absolutely, looks great, Matt.
Fab. Okay, cool. So so presentation this morning is about kind of working with your bank to manage your cash flow. And obviously being from NatWest Rapid Cash, I've got a brief overview of what our product is and how it can help in this current market. The main point I want to get across is kind of how you can best prepare yourselves for managing your cash flow if you're still trading or pivoting your business or even potentially thriving during the current crisis. But firstly, a very, very brief introduction as to who I am. So my name's Matt Coburn. I'm the sales and distribution lead for NatWest Rapid Cash. It's a new product that NatWest is bringing to market. Lead a team currently of 15 people within the wider business. We're really, really proud to be bringing this new product and scaling it to the market, helping UK SMEs with their working capital. From a personal perspective, roughly 20 years experience in the banking industry, from business and commercial banking through Invoice Finance and some kind of change projects in the background. I'm a very keen runner. I've got to be honest, lockdown's actually suiting me on the running front. So getting out, roads are nice and quiet, set a couple of PBs. So that's not been too bad. I've got a young family at home, like I said, so if you do hear them, I do apologise again. And when this is over, I'm looking forward to getting back to kind of climbing, trekking, visiting parts of the world with my family, with my friends, like I'm sure a lot of us are. Moving on to the presentation itself. So first and foremost, I know a lot of you already know this, but kind of what is cash flow in a business? So you have the what they say, you know, there are lots of different definitions of what cash flow is. It can be a nice complicated calculation, even an equation in the background, as it says on the left hand side here. So the decrease in the amount of money a business has to finance itself. In reality, what it means is how much cash do you have to keep your business going at any one point in time. And managing your cash flow is the reality of running a business, whether it be a multinational PLC right through to a small kind of one man or one woman band on the high street. Cash is king. That's always pretty much been true in the business environment and continues to be true even now during the current COVID pandemic. Moving on, so kind of common cash flow problems that a business can experience in BAU circumstances, or even now, is you can be a growing business. I've seen several examples in recent times in our business where transport firms or manufacturing firms all of a sudden finding themselves doing a lot more business than they would have otherwise been, winning potential new big contracts, or where the business is just growing at a rapid rate based on existing customer base. I think one of the biggest things we've been seeing here is where you have businesses that are trying to pivot in terms of what they're doing, where they may not necessarily have already been involved primarily with what's termed a vital industry, or dealing with the NHS, for instance. So a couple of live examples with Rapid Cash recently. Several manufacturers who've never ever been involved in the production of PPE, for instance, pivoting their business into producing gowns or equipment to support the wider NHS, find themselves winning big orders and need to figure out a way of facilitating those with cash flow. And so that's equally as relevant now as it is in a BAU environment. Another common area is that regular working capital gap. Traditionally, we've seen this in the temp recruitment space, but it's equally applicable to any area of business where you pay your kind of suppliers faster than you get paid by your customers. So where particularly if you're a younger business, you might not be able to generate the kind of credit terms from your larger suppliers that you have to offer to some of your customers to win that customer in the first place. And again, that creates a regular month-on-month working capital gap that of cash flow gap that needs to be covered. A third area that we're seeing that's very important for those businesses that are still trading right now in the UK marketplace is where they're cost conscious or they want an in case of need facility. Having something in the background that you can dip into as and when you need to is an ideal that a lot of businesses like to have, but obviously quite often that comes with a cost. So if you're looking around for facilities where they can sit in the background and cost you nothing until you actually need to come to use them, and they're not tying you into any onerous terms, then they can be kind of very, very good for your businesses. And I'm very proud to say that Rapid Cash can actually be one of those solutions for your business, and we'll come on to that in a subsequent slide. The fourth cash flow problem that we see quite regularly is where the alternatives that are out there or what you already have don't necessarily meet the need. So you had something in place, be it a business overdraft or maybe even a loan historically, but your business has moved to a stage where that particular facility is no longer applicable or working well for you, and you're looking for an alternative, but you don't necessarily want to be giving lots of personal security. You run a business for a period of time perhaps, and you feel the business should be funding itself, or you don't want to be tied in with with onerous terms and conditions, or for instance the loan you had to get you over a particular point in time has now been repaid, but you're finding yourself with a different cash flow gap, such as kind of items 1 or 2 that needs a different type of facility to cover. And again, a facility such as Rapid Cash, for instance, can be very, very useful there. And the final one, there are many, but these are the 5. The final one that we see a lot in our business is where the current arrangements are no longer suitable. So separate this out for number 4. It could seem pretty similar, but it's a little bit more applicable to the smaller, maybe younger businesses where a business is set up and it juggles its cash flow across a range of products, maybe a small credit card, a small overdraft, some personal finances. kind of company cash reserves, that type of thing. And that can be a really difficult juggling act for a young business or a small business. Quite often the MD, the managing director, is the HR department, is the sales department, is the finance department, don't always have loads of people around you to support you in these areas. And therefore having to juggle that and not having something simple and easy to use can be a real trial, and can really impact the cash flow of a business, because you're either spending a lot of time administrating those small facilities and maybe not achieving the sales that you want to do, or vice versa, you can't because the arrangements aren't suitable. And again, it could also be that the business is growing to a point where you want a larger limit, but you don't want to put business premises or personal homes on the line to meet those security needs. So all in all, like I said, there are loads of different cash flow problems, but these are the 5 that I see in my business most often. So moving on, like, what is Rapid Cash, and kind of how does it fit to meet those 5 needs above? So Rapid Cash is a new product into the UK marketplace. NatWest's been doing this product for a period of time, and we launched it last year, initially to our internal customer base, and then latterly in the year we went to non-NatWest customers, which was a big thing for us. It's effectively a digital overdraft alternative designed to support the working capital cash flow needs of UK SMEs. The facility itself is secured on unpaid invoices, so it does have some of the DNA of historical invoice finance, but we believe it's much more akin to a secured overdraft arrangement, because it's where it uses the real-time integration to your company accounting software and perhaps your bank account or even open banking platforms. It can make your cash flow kind of really, really simple to manage. We can get you the money very, very quickly, especially in this current climate, and it's very, very flexible in terms of the terms and conditions that it comes with and how you can administer it. The facility itself, our minimum borrowing requirements, so it can support businesses with a cash flow need of as little as £25,000, and our upper limit is £500,000 currently, and we can lend you up to 85% of the value of your company sales ledger or your unpaid invoices. We obviously do this on very competitive rates, and obviously with the changes to the UK base rate, these have become even more competitive. So they can start from 2.75 above bank base rates up to 8.5%, and there are no service charges, ongoing administration fees built into the facility in any way. And one of the key things, especially for the smaller businesses out there, is that there are no arrangement fees for facilities less than £300,000, which, if you think back to the previous slide, that kind of cost conscious kind of in case of need piece, it does mean you only pay for what you use, and it can sit in the background ready and waiting for you when you need it, and not impacting your company finances, apart from in a positive way. How it works is the facility itself, the platform, it links to your accounting package, whether that be a cloud accounting package. We cover kind of all of the key ones, so stage 1, 0, free agent, QuickBooks, but we also cover the 2 most common desktop packages, such as QuickBooks Desktop and Sage 50, which means we can actually reach out and support a huge amount of the UK marketplace. As I mentioned, it is secured against invoices, but one of the key differences that makes it more flexible than other facilities of its type are that you can pick and choose which debtors you want to cover. And obviously, those of you who've seen the video that was posted in the trail for this webinar, you'll notice that the use of the platform itself is very, very similar to how you set up the settings on an iPhone, for instance, which means it's very intuitive, very easy to use, very, very simple. You borrow or repay as needed within your approved limit. And obviously the borrowing that you take from us is repaid when your customer pays. But we don't have any contact with your customers at all. So you manage all of that, you retain the relationships, and you choose which customers you wish to fund. Some of the additional points that really should be noted are that we have a supported sales journey. So you can initiate the sales journey from our webpage, details of which are at the end of the presentation. You come through that journey, and if you choose to proceed, we'll give you a call and kind of take you through the rest of it, ask any additional questions or information that's required, such as taking you through the company finances, and any potential contracts and what have you that's in the background. But then once you're through the sales process, all the documentation and everything is digital, so there's no wet signatures. So in these kind of social distancing times, that's a real benefit of our facility. Everything can be done digitally. And then once you are a customer, we have a people that you can speak to in our in-life team. So you'll be given a named contact with a telephone number that you can pick up and speak to, as well as obviously managing your facility online. I should say that obviously there are eligibility criteria for NatWest Rapid Cash, like there are with any facility. Those are all available on our website, but effectively the key ones to remember are it's minimum borrowing requirement of £25,000. It's a business to business facility currently. So you'll need to be trading kind of business to business, open to limited companies and limited liability partnerships, with a minimum turnover of £100,000. So those are the key ones. Like I said, the wider eligibility criteria can be found on our website. Moving on, so as promised, so some of this is a little bit generic, as you'd expect, but obviously there are lots of other cash flow options available during the current position that we find ourselves in. So probably the most famous one, the one that everyone's talking about at the moment, are the several government schemes. The biggest one referred to as Seabills. So it's the coronavirus business interruption scheme. Obviously, this is the one that changes quite a lot, where the government is trying to open up to more and more businesses to offer those support to the UK marketplace. And the key things to remember there is obviously the government pays the interest and fees for the first 12 months, and capital repayment holidays are available. For the main scheme, it's an 80% government guarantee. However, as I mentioned at the outset, the recent update with business bounce back loans, I think they're called, has a 100% guarantee on limits up to £50,000. The big four banks won't ask you for a personal guarantee behind the government scheme. And obviously limits are available from £5,000 up to £5 million across the different types of schemes that are out there, with terms up to 6 years. Obviously other government schemes are available, so I've mentioned business bounce back, the loans, there is the furlough scheme, and there are also the few other bits and pieces that are out there, and obviously the government web pages have a lot of those details on there. There are, as with anything, as I mentioned before, some exclusions that apply, so obviously it's good to be aware of those. Obviously mentioned Rapid Cash already, my product. Obviously we believe that this is a really good option that is available in the marketplace because it's a flexible product. It doesn't tie you in, so if you take it, you're not tied into a minimum term. It's fee free as well, so you only pay for what you use on limits up to £300,000. There is some security that is required, including a minimum 10% personal guarantee, and obviously the limits I've mentioned, 25,000 to 500,000. You can have your money very, very quickly. It can be used alongside other facilities. So if your business is still trading and you want to take advantage of the government scheme, you can have both in place in the right circumstances. And again, I've mentioned there are some eligibility criteria. in place for Rapid Cash. I think one of the key things is between the two is kind of that preparedness and that thinking about where your cash flow gap is. Is it a one-off kind of hit that you need to cover for a relatively short period of time that you don't mind then paying back over subsequent years, or is it actually something that's going to prevail for 3, 4, 6 months in terms of a working capital, a cash flow gap where you're still trading, and you'd rather have something that was kind of a bit more real time, and that didn't tie you in for a period of time in the background, and was still, relatively speaking, cheap for you to run and quick for you to get. So those are the two key differences. So kind of comparing whether it's a single hit you need or a longer term amount of cash. There are some obviously other options to consider, because cash flow is not just around having a Rapid Cash facility or a Seabills facility. It can be, can you increase the cash flow and the speed of the cash coming into your business by taking payments in different methods? Unsurprisingly, we see kind of card payment services becoming very prevalent during the current climate, and obviously NatWest covers that with our till product, which is open to NatWest customers. Banks across the piece continue to offer business overdrafts, and many have made amendments, including my own NatWest, in terms of the terms and conditions of those overdrafts, such as potentially needing PGs and the fees involved. There are the traditional invoice finance products available out there. Additional government schemes, as I mentioned, the furlough scheme can be helpful to employers, where you need to manage the cash flow related to your employees. And obviously those businesses that are still trading kind of internationally or have kind of supply chain funding requirements, there are specialist products available across most of UK's banks, but obviously including NatWest, where you can approach them to help you there. Moving on, so this is where I kind of wanted to cover how you can best how you can best prepare yourself for working with your bank. So one of the things that I've seen over recent weeks, but it's often a common criticism of UK banks, is kind of getting in touch and asking questions. And what I would say is there are a few things you can do for yourselves as a business to get the best experience out of approaching your bank. The first one, especially in this climate, is kind of to be prepared, to be clear on what you're asking for. As I mentioned, do you think it's a single cash injection, or do you have a regular or new kind of working capital cash flow gap? So kind of have an idea, because there are a range of options available to you, and obviously your bank should take you through those. But having an idea in your head is very important, because that'll help you to kind of prepare the other things you need. Being aware of the options I've already mentioned. Having your kind of financial and business information up to date. You are going to get asked questions. Any type of lending that any bank does is based on a set of credit criteria. That includes the government schemes, including what I've read on the most recent one that was launched yesterday. There will be a set of viability assessments. There will be questions about your business trading history. You'll be expected, most likely, to share financial information about your business and potentially other information. So with regards to Rapid Cash, we try and extract as much of this information as we can from our links to your accounts package and your bank account. But even then, we still fairly regularly have to ask for up-to-date management information where there'll be gaps in that detail. And that's not the banks trying to be awkward. That's the banks trying to be sensible with the money we put out the door. And obviously you guys may want the facility very, very quickly. We want to get it to you very, very quickly. And being prepared and having the information to hand as much as possible really, really helps speed up that process. Also mention, there will be some viability assessments when we go through a rapid cash take on, for instance. We have got some additional questions that we now ask because of COVID-19 around how was the business performing before coronavirus came along. What impacts is it having, kind of not just now, but in the medium and maybe longer term. Who are the suppliers you work with? Because are they impacted? Because that them having issues can impact your business. These are the types of things that, just to be prepared, that you may get asked. I'm not saying that everyone will ask you in every case, but you may get asked. And again, it's not because we're trying to be awkward. It's because we're trying to sensibly lend the money, because in terms of the government money, we're the custodians of the UK taxpayer. And with our money, we want to make sure that we're putting the right facility into your business in the right way. A kind of couple of final ones in here. Obviously, nearly every product out there has some form of qualifying eligibility criteria. A lot of the information around that is available both on bank website, NatWest, our Rapid Cash website, but also the government websites outline eligibility criteria that is required to kind of check that, as much as you're able to, that the product you're seeking is the business is eligible for it. And finally, I think everyone in this current climate wants to speak to other humans about the potential problems they're facing or the solutions they want to put in place. Unfortunately, that's not always possible. Call backlogs are a reality of the current situation. Even in my team, we're a relatively small product, but even we, for the last few weeks, have been dealing with unprecedented call volume, which is fantastic for us as a business, but can equally be frustrating for you guys as potential customers. What I would say is, in my experience, our business and NatWest has put as much information as is possible onto our websites and as much resource as possible into things like web chats and what have you. And I would definitely take advantage of those, because again, they're very informative. Quite often they'll give you alternative ways to apply. And it may be that you don't need to speak to an individual to move forward in the route that you want to take, and so you could save yourself some time and get the facility that you may need quicker by utilizing other forms of contact. So that's just some kind of hints and tips from me on a personal level. That's what I've seen in terms of the customer base that we look after. So, kind of as promised, if you want to know more about Rapid Cash, take a note. Our primary contact number is 0330 808 7830. I know this information will be available afterwards, but also you can email us at rapid@natwest.com, and our website rapidcash.natwest.com. There's loads of good stuff on that website. A few customer testimonials where we've helped people, especially recently. There's a really good video which gives you a short intro as to what the product is and how it can work. And a lot of content in there about FAQs about how we can help businesses in a BAU environment and how we're trying to help people during the coronavirus pandemic. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I hope that you guys have found it informative, useful. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Excellent, Matt. Thank you very much for that presentation. It was very informative and very, very useful information for people. So, maybe just a bit of clarification in case people don't know. Obviously, invoice financing is, a product like this is quite innovative from one of the big, high street banks. Invoice financing, can also be, I'm sure people have potentially heard of factoring. So this is not a factoring arrangement. The relationship stays with the actual company itself.
Absolutely, yes. So one of the things that I'm trying to educate everybody I speak to about Rapid Cash is it isn't invoice finance. It is more akin to a secured overdraft. The one thing it kind of shares in common with invoice finance is that unpaid invoices element. But pretty much everything else is very, very different. So you can run it from a mobile device in your hand whilst you're conducting sales, what have you. It links seamlessly to accounts packages. It can link seamlessly to your bank account, and therefore it doesn't have any of the administration or overheads or overhangs that go with a traditional invoice finance facility. Cost wise, it's very, very similar to an overdraft. And like I said, with no arrangement fees up to £300,000, it can be very, very competitive if you're going to use it every day. But also, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to pay for it up to that level. Which again, unlike invoice finance, unlike a lot of overdrafts, it's pretty unique in that regard. So yeah, it is different. In terms of the final part of the question you asked there, we don't contact your customers. The relationship stays completely with you. We only deal with you as our customer, and that's the only relationship that we build. So we would never reach out to your customer base.
Excellent, thank you for that. I think a lot of people will. I know we've had a few questions about this, and something that I was wondering as well. Is it a requirement to be a NatWest customer to avail oneself of this facility?
No, so you don't need to be a NatWest customer to get Rapid Cash. What I would say is, if you're a customer of another invoice finance provider, we are currently kind of on hold working with those potential customers, unfortunately. But if you not with an invoice finance provider, but do bank with another bank, we can potentially help you. As I said in my presentation, we do have kind of additional questions and some information that we gather for non-NatWest customers, as I'm sure many of the people on the webinar would expect. But yeah, we're still open for business to non-NatWest customers, as long as they can satisfy our kind of eligibility criteria and our viability assessments.
Great, thanks, man. We have another question here from Chris. I think maybe just a clarification. I think you already did touch on this, but maybe we could just clarify it again for him. So he's wondering whether now Rapid Cash is only available for companies where the end company is another customer.
Yes, yes, yeah. I covered that in the presentation. So it's a business-to-business product at this moment in time. What I would say is Rapid Cash as a product is very young. What it looks like now is very different to what it looked like a year ago, and in a year's time I'm sure it'll look very different again. We're constantly developing it. One of the things that I'm most excited about in terms of working here is it's like being involved in a fintech, but with a huge trusted organization over the door. So we're constantly refining and developing the products with new features. We've got big aspirations to widen the potential customer base, increase the limits, for instance, add potential new features and benefits to it as well. So I would say it's a constantly evolving one. So to answer that question directly, yes, it's business to business. So if you're currently, like for instance, in the retail environment, dealing business to consumer, unfortunately we can't help you now. But because we're constantly developing, we're always looking at different spaces. So just because we can't help you now doesn't mean we might not be able to help you in the future. Okay,
great, thank you. I know you said in the presentation that the minimum turnover threshold is 100,000 to be considered. But there's a question here from Monica asking whether it's available for companies that have been trading for less than 12 months. If you fulfill that turnover criteria, is it still available to you?
Yeah, so that's a good question actually, and a point I've clearly not put on my slides. So yeah, one of the other minimum eligibility criteria that we have is that you have a minimum of 6 months trading history.
6 months, great.
So if you're 6 months old, turning over £100,000, business to business, limited liability partnership or limited company, trading with a borrowing requirement, of a minimum of £25,000, we potentially can help you. Yeah.
Great. So Monica, that is something that is potentially available for you. We have a question from Alan, who has who exports recruitment services to Europe, and his invoices are denominated in euros, and he's wondering if that would be acceptable to Rapid Cash.
Yeah, unfortunately, sterling invoices are the ones that we're looking at the moment. In terms of the international trade element and currencies, that is certainly something that's on our development queue, but it's not available just yet.
Okay. So maybe
sorry, just to clarify, sorry, David. What I should clarify is we don't exclude people who are trading internationally. All I'm saying is we will only fund the invoices that are UK based and denominated in sterling.
Okay, great. We have another question from Mark, wondering whether it's a recourse or non-recourse facility. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, so that's an invoice finance term.
Okay.
So it reflects whether it's kind of a factoring or factoring facility or not. So factoring, where we contact your customer base, is my mind block now. I believe that's the recourse element of it. So we have recourse back to your customer base. We don't have that. We don't contact your customers. This is a confidential facility that sits in the background.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Kirpal, I'm not sure this is really a question for Matt, unfortunately. It's about a funding company. He has a loan with a funding company, wondering whether he can borrow a Seabills loan to clear the other loans. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. Actually, I believe Seabills cannot be used actually to refinance debt, if I'm not mistaken. But again, neither of us are maybe Matt, maybe you can speak to that question. I don't know.
The answer I'd give to that is there's loads of great information on the government pages around Seabills.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're a NatWest customer, there's equally brilliant information on the NatWest page of what's available. If you're not a NatWest customer, I'm sure many of the other banks are also putting as much information about Seabills as they can online. My personal recollection is I don't believe you can use it to consolidate other loans, but that's correct. So I would check the government pages or your bank's website, because the answer will be there in the FAQs, no doubt.
I seem to remember that as well, but again, yes, that's good advice. So please check the government website. Great, Matt. I know that you're conscious of time this morning. I think we have one more. I'm sure we have a lot of questions. We have one more question coming through from Hazim. It looks like quite a technical one. What is the EBITDA to loan to value determined for the rates of 2 to 8%?
So I will try and answer it in a non-technical way. Very, very specifically, there is no real EBITDA or loan to value calculation in the background, other than risk bandings that we use within the business. One of the primary drivers is the size of the limit. So the very, very smallest rates, the 2.75, is only available to the larger limits where a potential arrangement fee does apply. So it's a trade-off between a smaller limit and a small arrangement fee. Sorry, a smaller interest margin and a smaller arrangement fee, over the simplicity of just having an interest margin and no fee. But it's more to do with the risk bandings that sit behind it, as opposed to a loan to value or EBITDA cash calculation.
Okay, great. Well, that was incredibly informative and very helpful, and we really appreciate you taking the time to take everyone through this morning. It's a great facility that people should consider, to help manage their cash flow. If it's something that they haven't considered, this type of financing is a great way to smooth your cash flow. And it sounds like NatWest has a great product in this space. So if you want to learn more about it, I put the details also in the comment bar, the telephone number, email address, and the website URL. So go and check those out. And I'm sure that the team there at Rapid Cash will help you if you have any questions. So Matt, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. It's been an excellent and very informative presentation. We very much appreciate having you on.
Thanks so much. Have a good day, everybody, and hopefully speak to many of you soon. Cheers.
Sounds great. Take care, everyone.